When we're in season, an adaptation that you're going to start to see happening as we start to increase the volume and the amount of throws that we experience, specifically with high intent days, is when we're going through pronation, acceleration, deceleration, you're going to notice that I'm stopping my rotation down this way. Now, what's going to end up happening is that our deep spine muscles are going to eccentrically load to stop the rotation. So what typically tends to happen is we lose thoracic rotation mobility back around to the throwing side. What's going to end up happening is that's going to throw off your kinematic sequencing, the timing of hip to shoulder separation. Everybody's going to have a different way of how you interpret hip to shoulder separation. Some guys are going to have more of it, some guys won't. That's just based on one structural makeup, right? And so over time though, that's where you're going to start to see the release height start to drop. So when people are asking, well, why is my release height dropping? Why is my front side the one that's starting to pull off? Why is my rotation starting too early? That's all based on how well you can delay and hold that counter rotation in that upper half. So again, when you're starting to see that over time, when I'm eccentrically lowering those deep spine muscles, we got to keep the integrity of thoracic mobility. But again, mobility is a strength through a range of motion. So instead of just cranking T-spine rotation, one of the things that we implement is isometrics, right? So we'll actually have a guy sitting on the chair, right? And we'll actually go, with manual iso holds, or even guys can do it on themselves. They'll go here, they'll go to their T-spine rotation, and now you're gonna squeeze down that oblique, all right? That's also known as DNS training, dynamic and neuromuscular stabilization training. So you're reteaching that integrity of strengthening that end range. And neurologically, what you're gonna then end up seeing happening is, because we're contracting, we're gonna gain a little bit more thoracic mobility for that, which is so crucial, because that's the integrity that we need to have, because that's going to drive the rest of the kinetic chain properly, right? And when you're starting to see the elbow stress or even shoulder stress starting to happen, a lot of that is also be predicated on the thoracic spine, and then obviously the way the scapula is positioned on the rib cage and how well it functions and moves to then allow better movement of the shoulder, and then that will also then help with the elbow stress. And that's one of the biggest things that we've been seeing here at BSF is, like, when guys are coming in for like their first, initial assessment, specifically like when we get to understand their injury history or just overall their training experience and what they've been accumulated to, specifically the guys that are coming to us that have had an issue or have had an injury in the past, right? That's one of the biggest things that when we're testing is we're seeing is to the throwing side in thoracic rotation, they have that limitation. So we got to make sure that we're training that integrity, not just in the off season, but making sure we're keeping that integrity properly in the in season.